being here for the NAACP monthly member meeting. I do want to, before we jump in, I do want us to take a moment of silence to think about our friends and families and the communities in Los Angeles who are dealing with this horrific fire. So I just would like us to take a minute and pause. Thank you. You know, something Martin Luther King says, it doesn't matter what is happening and where it's happening. You know, we are all be part of being in service. But I'm just gonna switch this because somebody just put me on.
I did that.
Yeah, I don't like I like being in the square versus me being the center of attention. Thank you. But we tonight we're going to talk about immigration. As many of you know, after this recent election, there had been a lot of talk about immigration and what can possibly happen all over the world, but in Santa Cruz County. And I want to say that I was very pleased with Community Action Board, the County Office of Education, Housing Authority, and all these other local organizations who came together like within 24 hours and stood on the steps of 701 Ocean Street and declared and claimed that no one in our county is going to get deported back to their native countries. And I was really, really impressed with that. I remember saying to Ferris, you know, I'm just so pleased with the community, how, you know, the support that we give each other. Doesn't matter what part of the county we live in, that when it's time to come together, everyone comes together. And so tonight I have invited two of my CAB colleagues. I also serve on the CAB board, and I should probably call it Community Action Board. We say it's short for CAB, which has doing amazing work for 60 years. This is their 60th year that they'll be celebrating all the work they've been doing throughout Santa Cruz County. And so I've invited two amazing people from CAB who their day-to-day is immigration and supporting community immigration. Claudia, I realized after when we was connecting that we were in law school at the same time. I said, oh, I know her. We're in Monterey College of Law at the same time. And I do know Kate, you know, from being on the board, and Kate and I have participated in a lot of different things together. And I was very pleased that they both said yes to speaking with us. You know, one, not just about, okay, this is what we're going to do in Santa Cruz, but really they're going to share with us the work that's being done, the work that still needs to be done. How can the NAACP, Santa Cruz County Branch, and its members support this work? Because as Martin Luther King said, and he was very big on immigration, you know, he created the reform of 1964. He was very, very in alignment with no one will be deported, that we're all one people. And so I thought it was absolutely important in such a time as this right now, as we're in the MLK month, to talk about where we are, how we move forward, how we continue to work together as a community, and how does this branch see themselves and where we see ourselves as supporting this most important work. So with that, I'm going to introduce Claudia and Kate. And I'll start with Claudia. She was born and raised in Salinas, California. She holds a BA in political science and Chicano studies from UCSB and earned her Juris Doctorate from Monterey College of Law. Claudia has 7 years of experience as a nonprofit attorney, and in 2022, she joined the Santa Cruz County Immigration Project. She feels honored to contribute to such important work and is dedicated to making a positive impact in the lives of those she serves. So thank you, Claudia, for taking time out of your evenings to be with us. And Kate, after living in 4 U.S. states and 3 other countries, Kate has found her home she loves here on the Central Coast. Before coming to the CAB Immigration Project 7 years ago, she worked at other Santa Cruz County nonprofits and taught adult classes in ELS, GED, and citizenship. She holds a BA in Spanish and MA in Adult Education and Community Development. Kate loves being a part of a dedicated team that educates people about their rights, guides them along a path to a more secure immigration status, and hopefully sees them all the way to U.S. citizenship. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kate and Claudia.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Let me see if I remember how to share on Zoom. Can you see my screen?
Yes, and I think if you just go into presenting.
Slideshow. Perfect. So as Elaine mentioned, I'm Claudia Magallon. I'm the directing attorney at the Santa Cruz County Immigration Project. And then I also have my co-presenter here, Kate Hinnenkamp. She's the program director. And in honor of MLK Juniors Month, we decided to post this picture with one of our favorite quotes. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So, Kate, do you want to get us started?
Yes, and I'm doing 1 through 7. Is this number 1 or is this number 2?
It's number 2.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you, Elaine, for having the vision to include us. And I hope that as we talk together tonight, if you're not yet on board with how our work at the CAB Immigration Project intersects with the work at the NAACP, I hope that you will be by the time we're done talking. And I have to start by giving a shout out to my dear old friend and colleague, Peg Galley. Peg, it's really good to see you. We taught together for years, and we went to the Obama's first inauguration together. Now, it was only downtown Santa Cruz where we went to watch it on a big screen, but that's a good memory that I have with Peg. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are at CAB and who we are at the Immigration Project. So as Elaine said, the Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County has been in operation for 60 years now. It was founded in 1965 as part of President Johnson's War on Poverty. And at that time, community action agencies were established in all counties throughout the United States. Some places they're private nonprofits like we are, some places they're part of county government, but everywhere you go in the country, community action is happening. We're working to eliminate poverty and create social change. And as I'm sure you know, poverty looks different in every community in the country. And so one of the things we do at community action agencies is every 2 years we do a community action survey where we talk to low-income people in the community about what challenges they're facing. And at CAB Santa Cruz, we also ask people about what assets they're using and how they're managing to manage despite limited income, and then we adjust our services as needed over the years. So here in Santa Cruz County for many years, one of the features of poverty has been immigration status, which is why we have our immigration project. But you can see the flyer here. It shows all the different service areas. So in addition to the Immigration Project, we also have housing programs that work with rental assistance to try to prevent homelessness, also do some intervention for people experiencing homelessness if they are youth or if they fit other certain characteristics. Soon to launch a tiny homes project in Watsonville, which will be a big new project for CAB. Yes, I see people applauding. That's very exciting. We also operate the oldest program at CAB is the Davenport Resource Service Center, which serves seniors, youth, farm workers, and anybody who needs assistance and support up on the North Coast. We also just have begun co-leading a similar family resource center down in Pajaro across the river in North Monterey County. so that the Casa de la Cultura Center there in Pájaro. And then we also have our Alcance, which does job matching and youth mentoring, and that part of that is the Day Worker Center, which is now located in the city of Santa Cruz on Soquel Avenue, and that helps match people looking for work with people looking for help around the house or at their business. And the print is very small, Claudia, on that flyer, but am I missing anything? So that's the basics of what CAB does. And this is the headline is in Spanish, but we do immigration legal services at our immigration project, and this is our examples of services that we do. We over most of our years, the services were affirmative services, meaning helping people sign up for services for immigration status they might not yet have, or renewing a status they have. And just recently, we've also begun doing some removal defense. So if someone has a notice to appear in immigration court or has an active deportation case against them. But we do lots of green card renewals, DACA renewals, applications for US citizenship. And then if people don't currently have legal status and they may have a path towards applying for residency through a family member or through a humanitarian means, for example, if they've been a victim of a crime. And and just legal consultations, which under for the next 4 years, that's probably going to be a really important avenue. Just people who may not know what status, if any, they're eligible for, just offering them a legal consultation so that they can decide how to move forward. And I know we're going to do questions at the end, I believe. So please, if you have a burning question, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, rest assured, we'll give lots of time to answer questions at the end. And we won't be giving any legal advice to anyone tonight. That's just our little disclaimer. And was that number 7, Claudia? I'm not sure how far I'm going.
This is still your slide.
Okay.
I'll stop you once it gets to you have 2 more.
Sounds good. Perfect. So, as we said, we wanted to make sure to link what we're talking about this evening with the legacy of Dr. King, and I'm sure that you are all aware of, how much Dr. King talked about building solidarity across different populations, about like the Poor People's Campaign, right, where there were efforts to link the struggle of poor African American people with the struggles of poor white people and other people experiencing poverty in the country. And that was, where a lot of people who maybe hadn't been paying attention before really started paying attention, because that divide and conquer strategy that the people in power were trying to use started to break down. And so we really see it as it's all one struggle. We're all one people, right? Different groups of people face different specific issues, but at the end of the day, all people have the same basic needs, and we're just trying to figure out a way to approach those needs, and it's to all of our benefits to unite. And as Claudia's quote at the beginning says, no one is free when others are oppressed. And so we have a little bit of history here. Next slide, please. So the struggle for civil rights ended up being closely linked to some reforms that were made with immigration law in the United States. So when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed, it outlawed discrimination, and that people started looking at immigration policy, which was restricted based on countries of origin. And so that formula was done away with. There are no longer quotas that give preference to people immigrating from Europe, from wealthier countries. And now immigration, it's not to say that we're super thrilled with the current immigration law, but it doesn't overtly discriminate based on race or national origin. It's looking more at family ties or employment. And talking about some current civil rights issues, again, the impact on families of detention, deportation, family separation, due process. There's been things like the Muslim ban, which was overtly racist and discriminatory. And we just saw, I'm sure all of you heard about these detentions that just happened last week in Kern County. And from what we're hearing, some people were just stopped in the parking lot at the gas station or in front of the Home Depot. And somehow something about the person gave the immigration officers a reason to suspect they might be undocumented immigrants. Well, what was that something? They weren't like carrying a Mexican flag, obviously it was racial profiling. And unfortunately, we're probably going to see more of that in the coming months. The rhetoric, this last election cycle was horrendous. I mean, you look at what the rhetoric that was being used against Haitian immigrants in particular was horrible. And we've seen similar things targeting other communities. Struggle for fair wages, safe working conditions. Again, these are things that affect all workers wherever they're from. And the impact of status, which is something that a traditional civil rights movement didn't look at, but it's another line separating people, that two people, maybe with the exact same qualifications, the exact, lots of things in common, but one person has documents, one person doesn't, and their life paths might be completely different. We see it even within a single family, where one sibling might have been born in the United States, their older sibling was born abroad, and the younger sibling can go to college, they can get a job, they can do all sorts of things that the other sibling can't. Next slide.
Yeah,
Is that yours?
and I have the next slide. So, this is an issue that affects all of us. Like Kate was mentioning, we all heard about the ICE activity in Kern County. And that resulted, I've been looking at social media and things that are being posted from the people that were affected by farm workers, and a lot of them didn't show up to work the following day. And that has a chain reaction. A lot of immigrants do work in the fields, and they supply a lot of the food that this country feeds off of. So it affects us all. This is an issue. You know, if immigrants contribute to our communities in a significant and important way, and their deportation and their fear will affect everybody. The US deports people without criminal histories all the time, many of whom have lived in the country for decades. In 2017, 340,000 people were deported. And this is a significant rise from, from the 1900s, where usually it was around 20,000 people. And often the people that are deported have no criminal records. They're just, like Kate mentioned, at the gas station at the wrong time when ICE happens to show up. A lot of the people, play significant roles in their families, in their employment areas. Many are caregivers. Many are service providers. Like CAB employs a lot of people who have DACA status, and they contribute significantly to the work that we do. And current immigration policies harm families by separating them. And it has long-term potential long-term consequences. Deportations expose immigrants to violence and trauma in their home countries. Deportation negatively affects children, leading to food insecurity, economic hardship, and psychological distress. In the cases that I have seen for removal defense, a lot of the times the person that gets detained is the main breadwinner. So this affects their whole family, and a lot of the families are mixed status. So there's U.S. citizen children in there. Immigrant families face emotional strain, and children may experience anxiety, sadness, and behavioral problems. Deportations create fear, mistrust in communities. It reduces access to services and increases stress. I used to tutor a long time ago before I was an attorney. And a lot of the times, like I would overhear little kids' conversations, and some of them were scared that they were gonna go home and their parents wouldn't be there. So the impact that the threat of separation has on children is very significant. And it's something that they're just gonna, that they probably carry around with them. It's always this cloud looming over them. So overall, deportations harm the emotional and behavioral health of individuals and communities. And I'll pass it on to Kate.
We just wanted to share a few of the things that CAB is doing advocacy wise. So Elaine mentioned the press conference that the county held right after the election. And unfortunately, just one thing to slightly modify what Elaine said. Unfortunately, our county leadership can't promise that nobody from our county will be deported. All they can do is promise that they're not going to use county resources to help that happen. The odds are that people from our county will be detained and potentially deported. So we continue to work with, at the city level, at the county level. We're going to be at the Watsonville City Council tomorrow evening, presenting with Police Chief Zamora just about how we're working together to support the community. We're also working a lot at the state level with the California Immigrant Policy Coalition to advocate. We're fortunate to be in the state of California, right, which is a sanctuary state, and County of Santa Cruz is a sanctuary county, and the city of Santa Cruz as well as a sanctuary. So what that means, basically, federal law still prevails, but that local resources are not going to be used to help detain or deport people. Only when the law requires it will there be cooperation. So if somebody is detained in Santa Cruz County Jail, if ICE shows up with a judicial warrant with their name on it, county law enforcement has to give that person up. But they're not going to call ICE and say, hey, we have somebody here. We're wondering if they're on your list. So they're not going to do anything proactive like that. And people's records are safe. So, for example, school records, medical records, DMV records. Again, the state is not proactively giving up any of that information unless somebody from the Department of Homeland Security shows up with a judicial warrant requiring them to give that up. So we're continuing to advocate for policies like that, for funding to come down from the state to support a full spectrum of legal support and community organizing, community collaboration to support the immigrant community. One thing that might be of interest, there is currently funding from the state to support immigration legal services, but it is limited to people who don't have certain convictions on their criminal record. And so that's something that we're part of a coalition advocating to remove those stipulations, because we all know people can be convicted of crimes under lots of different circumstances, and they still should have the right to full legal representation. In immigration cases, unlike in criminal cases, as in criminal cases, you do have the right to an attorney in all cases, but what you don't have a right to is a free attorney. So you have a right to hire an attorney or to find look for a pro bono attorney. But if you cannot find free representation, or if you cannot afford an attorney in immigration court, you will not have legal representation in most cases. So that's another area for advocacy, um, to to find state, local foundation funding to make sure that everybody has legal representation. And community education, we're doing lots of know your rights education at schools, at different workplaces for like county staff, so that everybody is aware of their rights and can pass on to members of the immigrant community. We don't know a ton of about these detentions that happen in Kern County, but it appears that some people didn't know their rights and were answering questions that were put to them. Because generally speaking, unless there's some sort of evidence that somebody is undocumented, there's not a way they could be detained. And so we're kind of the belief that people did say, oh, yeah, well, no, I'm not from here, and no, I don't have documents. And that's when they were detained, at least in some cases. And so we're hoping to have that not happen here in our county. Anything you would add, Claudia?
Yeah, and we also are working on having a rapid response number up and running. I believe they're still looking for volunteers, and they need to train those volunteers to answer those calls. And then we're also, I don't know if we're providing trainings to the community, Kate, regarding the child safety plans, or are we referring them out?
Well, yeah, we're a part of that coalition and we'll be training CAB staff. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, a lot of the time parents are undocumented and their kids are citizens and have legal status here. So if for some reason they were to be detained, if the parents were to be detained or deported, a child safety plan is just a plan that would appoint somebody else as the legal guardian for their children, without giving up their parental rights. So maybe that is something that would give parents peace of mind when they go to work. And, the reality is a lot of undocumented people go to work and they have the fear that they might not come back home to their families. So this at least helps give them a little bit of peace of mind. Bob, go
Yeah,
ahead.
on the rapid response and the child safety plan, uh, is CAB putting opportunities for training on its website, or how do we find out about that?
I believe Paulina's the contact, but Kate, do you have more information about that?
Yeah, I'll put Paulina's contact, our colleague Paulina Moreno. I'll put her information in the chat as well. Yeah, so you're welcome to contact Paulina. You're welcome to contact me. But yes, volunteers are needed to get trained on helping people fill out that child care safety plan, as well as answering that rapid response hotline. And Spanish speakers are always in high demand, but even if you're not a Spanish speaker, there still are roles. So yes, please contact us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And on that note, this is information that we want the community to know. So share this with your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues. It's so important to remind them that they have the right to remain silent if they're stopped by an ICE agent. They don't have to answer any questions, especially regarding their birthplace, immigration status, how they entered into the US. They should be trained to say, I'm exercising my right to remain silent and I want to talk to an attorney. And they don't need to have an attorney at that time, but they need to say those words. Um, and I'm telling every undocumented person that they should have a number memorized of who to call in the event that they need to make that phone call. They have everybody has the right to demand a warrant before letting an ICE officer into their home. You don't need to open the door. You can ask them to show it to you through the window. You can ask them to slip it under the door. The warrant has to be signed by a judge. A lot of the times there are administrative warrants. Those aren't constitutional because they're not signed by a neutral third party. So it needs to be signed by a judge. It needs to have the person's name correctly, and it has to have the correct address. It needs to say what they're looking for. So those are things that I think the community needs to be educated on, because especially early on, because, I think any of us would be nervous if approached by a nice officer, even having legal status, just having somebody with the authority to arrest you would make anybody nervous. And it's important that that they have this kind of like muscle memory in the event that this comes up. So like I said, they have the right to speak to an attorney. They have the right to refuse to sign anything before talking to the attorney. And they have the right to refuse to show any documents. Let me see. Yeah, and they should remain calm, not run away, because ICE can use that as evidence that they don't have legal status. Yes, Jane?
Yeah, I have a question. What if they do have a warrant? And is it likely that these ICE officers will be carrying warrants?
So a lot of the times they have administrative warrants, which are just issued by the Department of Homeland Security. So they're not considered constitutional because they're not signed by a neutral third party, which would be a judge. So they should look at it, make sure that it's not on an administrative form. It should look like a legal pleading. It should have all of that information, and it should say what the officer is allowed to search. So if they're looking for a person, they shouldn't be going through drawers. They need to look in places that it would make sense. If the agent does have a warrant, then you have to let them in. But you can still make sure that they're not going beyond the scope of what the warrant is for. So like I mentioned, if it's looking for a person, they can look in closets, they can look in the restroom, but they shouldn't be going through people's drawers because the person doesn't fit in there.
So can I ask a question about something that used to be done in some other threatening times?
Yeah, of course.
Can you hear me? In some other threatening times, we had red cards that were wallet size that we passed out to people who, either for one reason or another we thought might be threatened. And it stipulated a lot of the things that you just said. And it also had some contact numbers so that they could have that really close to their person. Are those available?
Yes, we have those. We still haven't added the number to it just because the new cards we get will have the rapid response number where they can call if they're detained. But right now, because nobody's picking up that number, we haven't printed out the cards yet with those numbers, but they're coming soon.
Thank you.
And we do have the red cards without a number yet, but maybe, they can use the red cards and put our number on there, or a removal defense attorney's number, just so they can have somebody to call in the event that they are stopped or detained.
So those red cards would pretty much say what you just said about
Yes.
how they should behave and not behave and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the things that they can say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so once you see the warrant, take a picture of it if you're able to. Take pictures of any damage done to your property, any identifying information of the agents, like a name, a badge number, any evidence of unlawful entry into the home or harassment may be helpful. So maybe if somebody else is in the home when this is happening, ask them to record if they feel comfortable doing so. Just any evidence that'll help a person build a case in court if ICE comes in without a proper warrant or if they exceed the scope of that warrant. So this is some advice that we're giving to the community. So if they're stopped by law enforcement, these are the steps that they should follow. They should show their license, registration, proof of insurance. They should keep their hands on the wheel, let the officer know what they're doing. If they're going to reach for their registration, they should let them know, I have nothing on my hands. I'm going to reach for the registration in my glove compartment. Sign the ticket, otherwise you'll be arrested. Ask if you can park your car in a safe place or have a licensed driver take it away if you're arrested to avoid any towing or impoundment fees. If anybody's ever pulled over, in a lonely area, you have the right to drive to a safe place before pulling over. And a lot of the times it's a lot safer. Pull into, a convenience store, somewhere where there'll be other people who can see what's happening. And if you ever happen to be a witness, you can also help the case by recording the encounter just to make sure that everything is above board and they're doing what they're supposed to do and not exceeding, and that the police officer is not exceeding their authority. And if anyone is stopped by ICE, they can show the little red card that was mentioned with the constitutional rights. They can ask the agency why they were stopped. They don't have to show a license or a registration unless they have a warrant. Don't physically resist a search. Say, I do not consent to the search. Don't sign any documents. Don't lie. It's better to just exercise the right to be silent. Don't discuss country of origin, citizenship, immigration status with anyone other than a lawyer. Yeah, and ICE agents will often use deceptive tactics and try to intimidate the persons that they've detained. So it's important that people know if you're detained, you have the right to exercise your right to be silent. And to an attorney, if they say you're not detained, you have the right to leave. So you don't have to stay there. A lot of the times they try to act like they're your friends and try to keep you there and keep you talking. But if they say you're not detained, then you can leave. So unfortunately, a lot of immigrants are a vulnerable population, and a lot of the times there are people who will exploit that. So it is important to know that only an immigration attorney or a DOJ accredited representative can give legal advice. A lot of the times they see notarios promising things that they can't really, that people aren't really eligible for, and they just take their money and put them at risk of put the people that they helped at risk of being deported. So it's important for the community to go to a trusted attorney or a DOJ accredited rep for their immigration cases. Even with an attorney, though, it's important to have a contract signed. The contract should detail what the work provided will be, what the fees will be, and the client should get a copy of everything that they signed and anything that's filed on their behalf. The provider should maintain contact with that person and keep them updated on the status of their case, and answer any questions they have within reason. Sometimes you get clients that are a little bit more anxious and want an update every day, and there's not going to be updates every day. But they should, for the most part, communicate with their clients. A client has the right to receive a full copy of anything that's filed on their behalf, any receipt notices from USCIS, and a provider should never refuse to give these back, even or charge a fee for them. And then one other thing is, if people find themselves with their main breadwinner detained, a lot of the times they'll be desperate for money and you take out loans that have really high interest rates. So that's also something to warn the community about. A lot of the times there are agencies that help fundraise or help cover some of those fees. So let the people in your life that are at risk of detention know this. And they should check in with a legal provider just to make sure that it makes sense. But they should avoid payday lenders and, they're going to borrow $100 and end up owing thousands. And then they'll be harassed for payment. So if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So this is something that everybody should know about. If ICE comes to your work, do not allow ICE agents to enter your workplace. Do not interact with them. If they have questions or requests, the worker should say, you're not allowed to enter, talk to my employer. If ICE agents try to enter a private area, you should say this is a private area. You cannot enter without a judicial warrant signed by a judge. Do you have a judicial warrant? And then encourage your coworkers to take video or take photos of any interactions with ICE if they feel safe to do so. And if the agents do say that they have a judicial warrant signed by a judge, ask for a copy and read it and make a copy if you're able to. Watch the agents carefully, keep track of what they do. See if they're following what is written on the warrant. For example, the warrant may limit the areas the agent can search, so that's important to make note of and record if possible. If ICE agents try to question you or other coworkers, remind your coworkers that they have the right to stay silent and to ask for an attorney. When immigration agents leave, record or write down everything you saw. This will help you remember the details when you talk to an attorney later, or if you write a declaration in support of somebody else's case. That way, it's written when everything's fresh in your mind. And then, as Kate was mentioning, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We're all in this together, and we're all stronger together. So this is important. A lot of the times people don't want to participate or help in a cause that doesn't affect them. And I think this poem is a good example of why that's not the best idea. And I'm going to go ahead and read it. First, they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. So I think this is a very powerful poem. We're all stronger together, and we should support each other in any way that we can. And Kate, I don't know if you want to add something to it, to this unity message. Thank you for inviting us, and we're available for questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah. And before we conclude, I'll explain a little bit about our services, in case you refer anybody to us. We have really high demand at the Immigration Project. A lot of the time we can't answer all the calls that we get. It doesn't mean that we're not working. It just means we're on the line with somebody else or helping somebody else. But if somebody's unable to get an appointment immediately, they can always request our list, a referral list for other immigration agencies or private attorneys. And if they keep calling, they will get through and they will be able to secure an appointment. But we just have limited appointments because the demand is so high. So if you hear somebody complaining that we didn't answer the phone or they weren't able to get through, just let them know to keep trying and we will get to them.
Thanks, Claudia. Jane, you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this isn't a question for you two, though. This information on people's rights is really valuable and useful. So thanks so much for sharing it. But I'm wondering if you or anybody else on the call knows of any like protective actions that we can take in terms of like having people come into our homes or, showing up when ICE shows up, that kind of thing.
Hey,
Yeah, if you're interested in the kind of work like the responding when ICE shows up, I would refer you to contact either me or my colleague Paulina. That rapid response hotline, that's who's organizing that kind of work, is when somebody calls that hotline, the dispatcher gets specific information about where ICE was spotted, and then there are people who will get mobilized to show up.
and then Bob, I believe you had your hand raised.
Oh, yeah, I thought I could just type it in the chat, but I was wondering if it's possible to get a copy of these slides.
Yeah, of course. I'll send them to Elaine.
Dana?
Thank you.
Yeah. Dana, you're muted.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, so I have a few questions. Are these slides, is this presentation also available in Spanish?
We finished putting it together a few minutes before we presented. But we could make a copy available in Spanish maybe in the next week or so.
But we have lots of materials. I don't know if you mean this specific presentation, but we have a Know Your Rights presentation in Spanish. This was custom made for this
For
audience.
this, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and we do have in develop a video. We're going to do an English version and a Spanish version of a video in collaboration with Catholic Charities, Watsonville Law Center, UFW Foundation, to have like a local Know Your Rights video that we'll be distributing as well.
Right. So I have heard of something about as it's called a care package or a care kit that's supposed to be used in workshops with attorneys that has information for people, but I hear it's a pretty hefty package. Do you know anything about that?
Maybe you're referring to the child care safety plan. That's a document that parents can fill out to express who they would want to look after their kids if they're temporarily unavailable. Do you think that's
Well,
what it
that
is
might be
you're thinking?
included in it, but I think it has the do's and don'ts like you have here of
Hmm.
how to handle situations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll ask someone else about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, there's so many materials out there. What we're
Yeah,
trying to do now is kind of simplify it, and we're working with the Santa Cruz County Office of Education. There's going to be a website site up very soon. I can put what I believe is the URL in the chat, and that will have a lot of a curated selection of resources
Mhm.
online available that are locally appropriate.
So what about children? I was just thinking about the children who might be at home when their parents are working and someone comes and knocks at the door. Is there some special way we can reach children and tell them, prepare them for what might happen?
I mean, I think the way to that would be educating the parents first.
Hmm.
I don't know that we can go to schools. Maybe we can share materials with the school district.
So advice to parents about what to tell their children.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it would be the same information.
See, I think a lot of time people try to protect children, but it's scarier to them. They hear about it, and it's scarier to them to not know what to do. And I was once with some kids, and I asked them what's your biggest fear, and they said that my mom will be taken back to Mexico. Well, do you know what you'll be able to do then? Well, no, they didn't, you know. So just being able to have something at their level that's honest and helpful to them, because it's the fear of the unknown is worse. Know somewhere where they can get help. So I'm just wondering about that. And
Yeah, that's a great point. We're working really closely with the school districts and with organizations like Pajaro Valley Prevention that does mental health in South County. So I know that they are, they're really the schools and the mental health clinicians are really the experts on those the
yeah.
how to communicate with kids.
And sometimes the kids are going to be educating their parents, as well, because they know the parents don't want to deal with it, but sometimes the kids are more able to say something to their parents. And one other thing that occurred to me uh, is they were talking about the problems of people in cars. And I was thinking, well, wouldn't it be a good thing to suggest to people to ride buses whenever they can because they have the witnesses, they have the protection? I don't know. It's just a thought I had.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I don't know. I mean, in California, people can apply for driver's license when they're undocumented. Um, so as long as they know their rights and they know not, not carry any documents identifying where they're from, I think they should be fine continuing to drive. And I just think we need to be careful with the messaging we're sending. We don't want to scare our communities. We want them to exercise their rights. And I think they should continue going about life the same way that they're doing at
Mhm.
the moment. They just need to be prepared in case of anything. Yeah,
Okay.
but taking public transportation is a good idea for many reasons, but we don't want people to change their habits just because of this situation.
Okay, I see that viewpoint. And just one other thing I was going to ask. I noticed you had us, it seemed like there was a slide that might be missing before the avoid scams. Because what do you do if you are arrested, and how do you get an attorney? Just the basics of.
So we're putting together a referral list of just removal defense attorneys that's in the works. Um, And honestly, the issue is that there aren't going to be enough immigration attorneys available to meet the demand. That's one of our fears. And we do have a fellow right now that's helping us with our removal defense work, but this is something new. So even we wouldn't have full capacity to adequately respond if detentions were to take place in our area. But we're trying to put together a list, and that's why we're advocating, it should be a right for people in detention, even if they are immigrants, in immigration court to have access to the same thing, in criminal court, people are entitled to a public defender at no cost.
Mhm.
In immigration court, that doesn't exist. Um, but we are putting together a list and we do offer consultations for people in removal defense. There's just, oh, Elaine left the meeting. There's just no, we can't say that we'll be able to help everybody. So everybody should just know the number of they can save our number. We'll try to connect them with somebody else. or if they know of a removal defense attorney that they'd like to have represent them, they should have that number memorized.
If they are arrested, can their iPhones be taken away from them?
Yes.
Okay, that's me. Sorry. Thanks very
Yeah.
much.
And
And
the
I
one
This
thing
is,
I was going to add is that the rapid response phone line will also connect people with, those same lists of potential attorneys that might be able to represent them.
Yeah.
I see we have Dr. Brown Child's hand up and Roland, and I want to be conscious of the time, so we'll start with you, Dr. Brown Child. We'll go to Roland, then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you very much. Great
Thank you.
presentation, very informative. I'm a professor emeritus, University of California, Santa Cruz. I was in the civil rights movement in the 60s. I've been stopped a number of times by immigration coming and going around, coming into the country, leaving the country just because of the way I look. But have you been able to run this presentation by the university? I know it's a state institution and it's subject to whatever the state is doing that might or might not parallel the county and the city. But I think the information you have would be good for the
Mm,
chancellor to hear, good for the upper, the administration of the university to hear, both in
mhm.
terms of students and people who work at the university.
I second the motion on that because I have students who I know are illegal and are very worried. So, and that's at UCSC.
Mhm.
Right.
Thanks, Marilyn. And if I may, the preferred term is undocumented.
Yes.
Illegal people usually take as a slur. So, when possible. That's a good question. We work really closely with the community colleges, Cabrillo and Monterey Peninsula College, but yeah, nobody from UCSC has reached out to us. I don't know if they have like their own legal counsel that is
Mm,
giving them information, but
mm.
certainly we would be open to
Yeah. I mean,
that.
I'm sorry. This in the interest of time, I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that question either. I'd be glad to look into it a little bit and see maybe if I can get you all, excuse me, contact with
Absolutely.
whom to, get in touch with. I think I can do that.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat and then you can also reach out to Elaine if that's easier.
Okay.
Thank you. Roland?
Where can one get the little red cards once they are updated from 4 or 8 years ago? And A and B, is there a plan to give them to various likely employers of undocumented workers, such as farmers in the farmers markets or um, landscape uh, businesses, all kinds of various businesses?
Yeah, good questions. The red cards, you're welcome to reach out to me or my colleague Paulina. We will have them continue to be available at different CAB office sites. We're also working with partner organizations to have them at schools, at other nonprofits and county agencies. The employers, that's a little bit tricky. If an employer reaches out to us, we definitely will share information, but of course, it is technically against the law to employ somebody who is undocumented. So we don't usually reach out proactively and say, "Oh, we think we know you're probably employing undocumented people." So it's a little bit tricky, but certainly
Yeah.
we're trying to reach workers wherever we can.
Okay.
Yeah, and they can also request them from ILRC. I'll put in the link for employers if you want to share the link with them.
So I want to thank you again, Claudia and Kate, for coming. Let's show them a round of applause. This was really, really important information. they had mentioned and put in the chat contact information for Paulina. Actually, she's actually going to be one of our speakers at the after the MLK March, and so I'm very, very excited for that. And speaking of the MLK March, on Monday, January 20th, we will be lining up at Pacific and Cathcart around 9:30. Come down, march with us. Let's do this together, because as it was mentioned several times tonight, we can't do this work by ourselves. We have to do this work together. So what a time to come together on Monday to celebrate the work that MLK has done and has passed the torch on to us to continue to do. And so I hope you all will join us. If anybody feels moved, we are still looking for sponsorships, because these things cost money, and to keep the work going with the branch, we welcome that as well. So I want to thank everybody for being here this evening and wish you a blessed week, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday morning. Come join us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Elaine, always.
Thank
Can't
you,
wait to
Dr.
see you all
Boucher.
God bless
then.
you.
Thank you to our guests. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very